Welcome to Licensed Poetics, a podcast where we talk about stories. I'm your host, Fangling.
And I'm your host, Achim.
Welcome to this very special episode. We have a very exciting guest with us today, Cady.
Woo! Hello. My name is Cady. Okay, so I'm obviously a friend of Fangling and Achim's. In terms of me as a reader, a little bit of background about myself. I grew up in China and I moved to Australia when I was 11. So I read both in Chinese and English. And
Ooh,
I would say...
we love that. Excellent.
I'm equally exposed to Chinese and Western popular culture and also in terms of classical culture. So it makes for a pretty eclectic book list. Professionally, I am also... very into sustainability. So there's a little bit of that showing in my book list as well. Right now teaching at the university on sustainability. So I also read a lot of reports that don't make the list. But I don't think we are in the realm of reviewing reports. So.
In this wrapped episode, we're just going to talk about books mainly, but that's not all of our reading because we all read like outside of books. We read reports, papers, research on other stuff as well.
I saw Cady's reading list for 2023 and then her book review as well. It was really impressive, and then I thought it would be great to have her today to discuss our 2023 wrap-up.
Yeah, we'll leave Cady's Goodreads details in the description. Feel free to stalk her on Goodreads. Okay, so I think the way this episode will work is that it's kind of like one of those old-fashioned book tags on... BookTube, if anyone watches BookTube or Book Talk. But basically we have a list of questions and then we'll go through them and then they will sum up our reading for 2023. Okay, let's just jump straight into the first question, which is, how many books did you read this year? And how many of those did you finish? And how many did you DNF? DNF, for anyone who doesn't know, did not finish. All right, I'm going to go first. This year I read around 30 books. And around 4 of them are DNFs, and around because there are some like collections of short stories that I've only read like maybe 6 out of 10 stories, but I feel like that still counts as a book that I've read. So those are my stats: 30 and 4 DNF.
Generally, though, like what makes you DNF a book?
I'm really not vibing it. If I'm liking it, a reasonable amount, I will finish it. And there have been a few books this year that I did just that. But sometimes I'm really not vibing, usually with the writing style. I'll just quit.
What's the sort of the indication? How many pages would you go?
Oh, I've DNF'd books at like 70-80%.
Oh.
Yeah. Sometimes...
Wow.
Well, that sounds like me, actually.
And I have DNF'd books at like 30 pages. Like, it just depends.
Okay.
Not trying to brag, but sometimes I do things like this. I watch an episode of anime, and I didn't have at the very last 5 minutes.
Good for you.
I'm not sure how I feel about that. That sounds a little bit similar to your efforts into creative writing.
Ouch!
Exactly.
Oh my god!
Exactly.
Achim's like, I did not come on here to be attacked right now.
Exactly.
It depends on what type of reader you are. So to me, there are 2 types. One that like basically finishes books sequentially. Like they read one book and then they read another. And then there are readers like myself. Like I am concurrently reading about 15 books.
Yeah, same.
Okay. I think that that could affect like number of books that you finish.
Yeah. I think if you are sequential, you'll probably be more committed to finishing.
Yeah.
I think we share that mutual habit. I think this is something I read from the Taiwanese author Liao in quote unquote in his own words. It's like seeing an escort. So he would have like books lying over all his where he lives, and then he would go to his desk and read a book. He go to his bed, read another book. He go to his kitchen, read another book. Yeah, that's how he functions. And
I love this like super misogynistic metaphor. Yeah. I always connect really deeply with those.
So this year I actually read a total of, I finished 18 books. In total I read a little bit more. Most of the DNFs, I get like 6 to 4 DNFs. All the ones that I started late. I started like in late, the last few days of the year.
That doesn't count.
No? Okay.
Well, unless you have like a legit reason for DNFing it. Because you know how you need a reason to justify a DNF? If you came up with that, I think that counts.
Like,
Right.
it's not like you haven't finished, or like it's something that you haven't finished yet versus something that
Okay.
you don't want to
Yeah,
finish.
you have decided
right.
not to finish.
Okay. I guess in that case, I have like 3.
Okay.
So the ones that are particularly stood out is The Hours by Michael Cunningham. It's the one about Virginia Woolf. So
Is that a DNF?
yeah, that's DNF. I actually have a very very legitimate reason for the DNF.
Yeah.
It's actually how I learned about this book is through the book Exploder podcast. There was an episode where they have Michael Cunningham on the podcast when they have him read the first bit of the novel, where he describes the scene where Virginia Woolf plunges into the water and how the wave carried her. And I just thought it would be really beautiful. It's just something so tender and so pretty. I have to buy this book specifically to read that scene.
Okay.
And then I read that and I just had my dopamine rush.
Oh,
and
okay.
that's
So
it.
you're like, just give me that scene of her jumping into the water. I don't need anything else. I respect
Well, I'll
that.
come back to that.
I
Maybe, yeah.
respect that.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Cady?
So in total this year, I finished 26 books.
Mm.
Plus, I'm concurrently reading about another 12.
Love it.
I don't tend to not finish books or choose not to, but there is one book this year that I have chosen not to finish.
Oh, juicy.
And it is spicy because it is the most popular book on Book Talk this year.
Oh, I think I know
Fourth
Fourth Wing. That was Fourth Wing, by the way, in case you didn't hear amid our screaming. Fourth Wing, yes. It's
By
so popular.
Rebecca Yarros. So yeah, I've seen it on multiple book lists and at the end of the year, and then I decided to give it a try about 2 weeks ago.
Mm.
Okay, to be completely honest here, it was insufferable.
Excellent. We love this kind of reviews. What kind of book is it?
It is a fantasy romance novel, so romantasy. I think that's what they're
Fantasy.
calling the genre now.
Yeah, it's very popular genre, I think.
Yeah. But this particular book, I think it just mashed together every single trope we have ever encountered in these genres
Mm.
in a very unoriginal and just
Insufferable.
It's a
Yeah.
mosh pit.
I can totally imagine. How trashy was it?
very
I want to trash it.
and it's got that kind of I'm not sure whether Western readers are actually familiar with this concept of but like Chinese readers are, like the Marisu, like Marisu, like they just make everything so special about the
The girl.
protagonist. Yeah, like she
She's
has to
so
have
special.
all of the most special things. She's the general's daughter, but she has to be a bookworm and like so nerdy. But she actually aces all of the physical tests as well. And then like this is a book about dragon riding. And so when it came to like the dragons choosing them, not only does she get the most special, biggest, badass dragon, but she also got another dragon who is tiny and cute. Just because she's
She can
so
do both.
special.
Just because she can do both, you know? I can so imagine it.
How often do you guys pick a book from like the top reads, the list? Yeah, that's like the way that Cady pick up Fourth Wing.
I'm trying to do that more, actually. Yeah, well, I want to stay in touch with contemporary literature.
Yeah. I'm such a contrarian. I never like to pick up what's popular.
I think that's you in every aspect of life.
Yeah. Achim is very much a self-labeled contrarian.
What do you mean self-label?
Well, okay.
at
Achim is
least-
very much an actual contrarian.
At
too.
least give me one identity. I can cling on to.
I did not expect an identity spiral in this episode.
It's okay. We can go very deep.
It's very spicy.
Yeah. I think for me, I also do this occasionally just to be in touch with like popular culture and contemporary literature. I think Yellowface is another example of like I saw it on the list and everyone was talking about it, and if you don't read it, like you're not in the know.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. I think the books that I tried to do that with this year were Yellowface, My Dark Vanessa, which I'll talk about later. And also, I'm Glad My Mom Died.
Mm.
Those were like the bestseller books that I
I'd
tried.
love to hear about it.
Actually, I did pick up something like this. I had Ocean Vuong,
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That counts.
Time's a Mother. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
One of my favorite books now.
Oh,
Yeah.
great. Okay, next question. It's a very exposing question. How many Chinese books did you read this year? I'm not answering it first. You guys can go first.
It's so tough, this question for me. I read 4 Chinese books.
Oh, well done.
Yeah. Basically because like some of the books, they're not available in English yet. Like they're not published in English yet. Like so for example, the ones I read earlier this year is called The Mystery of the Alphabet by Seiichiro Oyama. So it's like a Japanese detective fiction.
Oh, that doesn't count. Sorry, I don't think that counts. I think I meant like Chinese books
like
written in
original,
Chinese.
like
Yeah,
original
yeah.
Chinese books.
Yeah, sorry, I should have made that clear.
Oh, right.
Mm.
In that case, so it has to be like from a Chinese author. In that case, I think 0.
Oh, okay.
Wait, no, sorry. Does audiobook count? Audiobook also counts, right? Yeah. But yeah, I did listen to one of the Chinese audiobooks, which is The Free Body Problem.
Oh, yeah, that counts.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
super counts.
Yeah.
Did you just read the first one or the...
No, the second one, The
Oh,
Dark
okay.
Forest. Yeah.
Okay, amazing. Well, I read 2 Chinese books this year.
I read 5 out of my 26 books were in
Oh.
Chinese by Chinese authors. And I think I will do more next year.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Chinese books I chose were primarily classical literature,
So, yeah.
like 余华, 在细雨中呼喊, and also 呐喊, which is by Lu
yeah.
Xun. Yeah, which is a
Classic,
collection of
yeah.
classic.
These are
short
classics.
stories.
Yeah.
Mm.
Modern classics in
Yeah.
Chinese literature.
And then and the other one that
I think we both read.
yes, it's called Chinese name is 乡土中国, which literally translates to Village China, but the English edition is called From the Soils.
Yeah.
And it's an anthropological take on rural Chinese society, and basically breaking down is the sociological and philosophical like structures that embed Chinese society, Chinese rural society, which in turn has translated to much of Chinese society today, I think.
Yeah.
Because at one point, like not that long ago, everyone in China is basically rural China. And I still see a lot of these patterns prevailing in current society.
Yeah, definitely. It was one of my favorite books as well.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm glad you liked it.
Mm.
Highly recommend for anyone who wants to understand China.
Yeah. I was gonna say the same for one of the Chinese books that I read, which you read as well. It's
And
called
reading.
Oh yeah, it's called China in 10 Words by Yu Hua. I read the Chinese version, and it has an excellent English translated version as well. And that one focuses more on modern China, and especially the economic transformation in the 80s. Yeah, that one is also definitely must read if you want to learn about China. Okay, next question. Which country did you read from the most? Rank by author's country of origin. And by the way, there are some authors that are from 2 countries, grew up here, moved to a different country, etc., etc. And the way I organize my data is that for those people, I just count them as from both countries. The country that I read the most from is definitely the United States. I read 13 authors from the US. And the next place on the list is the UK. I read 5 authors from the UK, and then 4 from China, and then 2 from Russia.
That's very interesting breakdown.
Yeah, I think it aligns with my interest. A lot of US and UK authors are classic authors and also contemporary authors. Those best-selling books that I mentioned, they're all from the US. And then China and Russia, they're just, I guess, my personal interest. And I read 1 author from France, 1 from South Korea, and 1 from Belarus. 1 from Ukraine, and 1 from Australia.
So I didn't break it down into countries of origin. Sorry about not doing the homework. But I broke it down into kind of vaguely, not ethnicity, but like
Western, Eastern?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
17 books from the West out of 26. 8 who are Asian authors, and then 1 Middle Eastern. So out of the West, I think just by looking at this list, it is also predominantly US and then UK.
Which is fair because they have the most publishers. in the world, yeah.
Exactly. Out of Asian authors, mostly Chinese, but some Korean as well.
What about you?
Can you guys guess what's my distribution like?
I would guess it's kind of similar.
But you also mentioned the Japanese books.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So you would have a lot more Japanese than
That's actually a really valid guess because it's interesting. It's a three-way tie between US, UK, and Japan.
Wow.
Our guess is like right on point.
Yeah, it's spot on. Let me see. Actually, it's very important to know that I also read a couple of authors from Argentina.
Yeah. I was gonna say that. Yeah, Argentina.
Argentina. Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Argentine writers. Borges. It's the big one. Also, I read another one, Agustina Bazarica.
Tender is the flesh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And top of that, we have Brazilian, Polish, Chinese, also one Australian book, which is a poetry
That
anthology.
one.
Yeah.
Jazz Money.
Oh yeah, Jazz Money as well. Oh, yeah, I forgot about her. But yeah, Jazz Money as well. And there's another one called 40 Years of Poetry by Robert D. Fitzgerald. It's also Australian poetry anthology.
Okay, next question. How many translated books did you read? Rank by original language. For me, the first place is easily Russian. I read 3 books originally written in Russian and translated into English, and then 1 originally in Korean, 1 originally in French, 1 originally in German. So the Russian books were Dostoevsky, Zamyatin, and actually 4 books. 4 books originally in Russian. Kaminsky and Svetlana Alexeyevich. Those authors are not all from Russia, but they were written originally in Russian. Oh wait, sorry, Kaminsky is written in English. I'm so sorry. Kaminsky's poetry, Deaf Republic. Yes, that one's originally written in English. And then the German one was Kafka's Metamorphoses.
For me, I was looking through the list and surprisingly 0.
Oh my god.
Oh.
Wait, what about the Korean? Originally
that
in
was,
English?
Yeah, written.
Oh.
That
I
was
see.
Pachinko.
Pachinko, yeah. I
written
see.
in English.
Oh.
So I feel like that is probably an indication that I should get into more diverse authors.
Well, there are
Like
a lot of
Russian.
diverse authors
Yeah.
writing in English, so
Yeah.
that's fair.
Where I can, I do try to read books in their original languages.
Yeah.
And right now I'm reading Love in the Time of Cholera, which obviously is translated from Spanish. But it's made me want to pick up Spanish again just so I can read it in the original.
I was going to
It's
ask
so
you
good.
that. I was going to ask you that. The question would be, how far would you go to actually learn the language to read it?
Because it takes quite a few years of study of a language to be able to read a book in that language.
Yeah.
So I think in general, I would still prioritize just getting through the book first. And then if I really like it, I will come back to it.
What is your most read genre and what is your least read genre?
I was waiting for that one. I thought we should start with this one.
Yeah, maybe we should have.
Yeah.
We'll know that for next year.
Okay.
Okay, my most read genre is classics, of course. I read around 14 classics this year. And my least read genre is, unfortunately, poetry.
Oh.
It's not a big poetry year for me. I only read 1 collection of poetry and I DNF'd it. Whoops.
Oh.
Yeah, I need to read more poetry next year. Yeah, but like
Yeah.
it's not really surprising. I'm a huge classics reader.
How many classics?
14.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Out of
Wow.
30?
Yeah.
That's
It's
amazing.
tough.
Yeah, not just like 19th century classics, modern classics I count as well,
Mhm.
and also classic authors. There's this little collection of essays by Kurt Vonnegut. I counted that as classics as well.
Yep.
And I read, Shirley Jackson, Hemingway, Charlotte Perkins Gilman, Austen.
I've broken down my genres quite granularly, so it ends up being like the humanities and the social sciences being the top one. So 5 books out of 26, followed by classical literature, which is 4, and also tied with anything to do with like psychology or like kind of health or like self-help related. Like that is also one category. Like that is 4 books. Yeah, science and nature I also have another category, which is 3 books. Also read 3 poetry collections.
Wow.
And then 2 sci-fi, 2 biographies / autobiographies, and 2 contemporary fiction. And then least is fantasy.
Just
so
one.
Fourth wing.
book. No. That was DNF.
okay.
So it was Ocean at the End of the Lane.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
Love that one. All right. Well, what's your genres looking like, Achim?
Okay, so I wouldn't say it's surprising at all. Looking at the stats, so a huge chunk is poetry at 27.8%.
Oh, congrats.
Yeah,
That's
I
always
think
good.
this is like a big year for me to venture back into poetry. Yeah. And also I've broken it down in terms of fantasy. So of fantasies / short stories, fantasies manga, of fantasies horror. So yeah, totaling at I think 37% of fantasies. Yeah, so these 2 are my biggest genres. Together with dystopian fiction, historical fiction.
Oh,
I read one.
which dystopia did you read?
Oh, dystopian is 10 Days to Flash.
Oh,
It's
yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
it's haunting.
Yeah.
It's a haunting book.
Ahim reviewed that book in detail in our last episode.
Yeah, so check it out. I've read wait, Cady, I have a question actually. Do you think The Prophet would be categorized as self-help in a way?
No, it's
No,
poetry.
poetry.
Okay, so
Self-help is how you use it.
Also, why just Cady? I love that book too.
oh yeah, right. Oh, I forgot that you read it, but not this year.
Not
right?
this year. I read many years
before.
ago.
Okay,
Yeah. I love it. It's definitely poetry.
Yeah.
It's not self-help.
I mean, poetry is like umbrella sort of category. There's so many.
No.
It's
I
a
think
literary form.
yeah.
Yeah,
I think poetry is poetry.
Oh, so it's like I know what you mean. Okay.
There are lots of self-help books out there that try to masquerade as poetry.
Figure what?
Next question. What is the longest book you read this year and what is the shortest one? I didn't read too many big books this year, but the biggest book I read is very big. It's The Running Grave by Robert Galbraith. It is 960 pages long.
Wow.
Yeah.
I read the audiobook. And I wanted to say something here because I loved reading this book. It's a detective fiction, crime fiction. And I just remember getting so immersed into it because the story is so long and expansive. And I remember feeling like nothing else in the world mattered except getting to the end of this freaking book because I need to know what
Just
happened.
wanted to get it over with.
Yeah. I wanted to get I was just like completely into it. And I miss that a lot. And I think I'll try to look for more experiences like that this year. And Robert Galbraith is a pseudonym for J.K. Rowling. So this is
okay. I actually didn't know that.
yeah, the latest of her detective novel series. And the shortest book I read is The Lottery by Shirley Jackson, which is really just a short story novella. It's 30 pages. And it's like a classic short story by Shirley Jackson. I was really trying to get into Shirley Jackson earlier this year. And this one, The Lottery, is like a disturbing, eerie kind of short story with a huge twist at the end. And apparently that twist was so big that it offended a lot of people that Shirley Jackson kept getting letters from readers. They're like, how did you end the story like this? What the hell's going on? Yeah, I actually like that one. It's only 30 pages. It's a super quick read.
For me, the longest book was Charles Dickens'
Nice.
David
one?
Copperfield.
Oh.
It's
That's such a huge
very
one.
So I listened to it, but it was more than 40 hours, which is by far the longest audiobook
Wow.
I've ever listened to.
Wow.
And it took me, like more than 2 months to get through it. But it was quite rewarding
Is it?
overall.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you find listening to Charles Dickens on audiobook? Because I don't think I can do that. Because he uses so many complicated words and stuff. I don't think.
I think that actually makes it easier
Really?
for me.
Yeah?
And the narration was so on point. So it wasn't a cast narration situation. It was just one person
Yeah.
doing different
I love
voices.
that.
Yeah.
I love that.
And
Yeah.
he is an expert. And to think of the array of characters in David Copperfield, and as soon as he opens his mouth and like says a word, like
can
we
tell,
know
right?
like
Oh,
which character he's
That's
embodying.
great. Yeah.
And yeah, because it's such a long book, and sometimes it can feel a little bit like a slog in particular places. So listening to it actually helped me get through it.
That's interesting.
For me, the longest book I've read is Witcher, The Lady of the Lake. So it's book number 7.
Is it by
Wow.
Andre, what's his name again?
Andrzej Zabowski.
Yeah.
How many books are in the series?
7th book concluded the main storyline, but I think that one was done back in 1998. So it's also the latest one just came out in 2017 because it's called the Season of the Storm. It's like a standoff to the main storyline.
So there are 8 books.
8 books in total, yeah. And this is the one I love in particular because it's a fantasy, firstly, and then generally what I look for fantasies is world building as well as languages. I think this book, it's just really spectacular in terms of the plot, languages, the imageries are really beautiful. I think it's just incredible book.
Fantasy books can be quite long sometimes.
Yeah. And then even though like I know the storyline by heart, I know it really well. And when I read the actual book, it still touches me every time.
Would you recommend the TV series? Have you seen it?
I've seen season 1. I watched the series just mainly to see Henry Cavill.
Everyone is. But how do you rate it compared to the books?
I would rate the book like a solid 9.4 out of 10.
Wow.
Very specific, yes.
And then the show, it was like season 1. I can only speak for season 1, but apparently it just declines from that. But I would read like season 1 like a 7 out of 10.
Okay. That's decent.
Yeah.
Okay, the next question is a more nerdy one. What is your most read decade? Rank by books, rank by date first published.
I feel like you're the only person who has done this.
Did you? Did you do it, or am I the only one?
I do have it listed, but I wouldn't say this stat says a lot.
Oh my god!
It's
See,
too
like
spread out.
no,
Yeah.
like for me, the time that it's most published is the most important thing.
Really?
It's almost as important as the title of the book.
Really?
Yeah, because whenever I read a book, I always Google when the author was born and when and where the book was first published. To me, that's incredibly important because I think books are like written at a time and then they're made in a context, and that context is important. And I don't mean like I have to be like completely familiar with that time period or whatever, but I just like to get an idea of like where it's situated. So yeah, I was very excited about the question, even if no one else was. Okay, my most read decade is actually kind of shocking. It's the 2020s.
Oh, this is very contemporary.
Yeah, it's very contemporary.
I'm not surprised by that. I think
Yeah.
that would be me as well.
I read 6 books from this decade, and then 5 books from the 2010s, 3 books from the 2000s, 1 from the 90s, 2 from the 80s, 2 from the 60s, and then 3 from the 50s. And the oldest book I read is White Nights by Dostoevsky. It's published in 1848.
Wow.
Oh, actually, sorry, that's not the oldest book. That's the second oldest. The actual oldest is Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen, published in 1817.
Wow.
I love both of those really old books that I read. Northanger Abbey was freaking excellent. Maybe it's not the best Austen, but it is still a really good book. It's about this girl who has a really overactive imagination.
Sounds like good material for adaptation.
It is. Honestly, when I was reading it, because there's so much drama, like friendship drama. Like she has this best
Drama
friend.
queen.
She has the protagonist has this best friend who is actually a biatch.
Oh.
yeah. Like the protagonist likes this guy, but then
Victorian mean
yeah,
girls.
exactly. But then the best friend like tries to set her up with a different guy and like try to sabotage her date with the guy that she actually liked. And when I was reading it, I was just like, this is like Regency era reality TV. It was fantastic.
I love that.
Yeah, and then White Nights by Dostoevsky. That's a short story or novella. And that one is also really good. And especially if you are a young writer, you should definitely read White Nights because it's about a young man with, like, again, a very overactive imagination who falls in love with a girl, but then he's like, I'm a dreamer. Sometimes real life scares me. I have so little real life because I'm all like in my head. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Set in St. Petersburg.
Yeah, for me, surprisingly, I read most books from the 2000s. It's mainly because I read a lot of Neil Gaiman this year. So both of his short story anthologies, Fragile Things and Smoke and Mirror, they both came out at around 2000s. Just insane. Just I think also American Gods were released at that time as well. It's just
very productive decade for him.
Just something that is simply timeless. It's like a timeless classic.
Agreed.
Okay, the personalized questions for our guest, Cady. How many environment/agriculture books did you read? Because that's like an area of special interest to you.
Just one this year. A little bit less than previous years. The year before I probably read like 7. I think it's partly shaped by the fact that I was working more flexibly this year. I got made redundant in my job, and it was more like out of spite. I didn't. No.
Out of spite, you're like, I'm never touching this genre again because of the bad experience.
It's not true. It's not true. So this book was Feral by George Monbiot, who wrote my favorite book of the year before, which is Regenesis. So, but this was an earlier book of his. Regenesis is about how messed up, or if you can allow this, how fucked up. Beep.
We allow swearing.
Okay. Oh, great. How fucked up our food systems are. Whereas Feral is the book before that, and is about rewilding as one of the measures or initiatives to help restore our nature. So yeah, it's a pretty good book. I think it's a little bit too ahead of its time in terms of its ideas. It would be considered a little bit radical now, but I think in 5 years' time, people would really value what he's presenting here. Like nature conservation, like we've all known about it, but like actually valuing nature in an economic sense is still a very nascent field in economics and in just general society. And that will be the trend for the next 5 to 10 years as we take into account the footprint that we have on nature. And also just the fact that like we always consider ourselves as external to nature, but the truth is that we are nature, we are embedded within it. As long as nature is bounded, the human economy must be bounded. And that is a notion that we all must accept.
Okay, personalized question for Achim. How many fantasy/mythology books did you read this year?
I think we covered this.
Yeah, I think we'll just give a head count. I think in terms of fantasy, I think 8 fantasy, including 2 manga/ graphical novel. I do read like 10 mangas this year as well, but I didn't put it on the list.
You should next time.
Okay,
I think you should. Yeah. Another thing though, when you read manga, Do you find it much easier to read the Chinese translated rather than the English?
Oh, that's a good one because I think just generally Chinese shares much more similarity to
With Japanese.
with Japanese.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
than
much
English.
easier.
Yeah.
Feng Ling. So we know you're the token socialist. Okay. no.
Socialist warrior.
Socialist warrior in the room. So tell us about how many socialism related books you read this year.
Maybe this question should have been written as socialist history related books. Did I read? And 5. I've
Wow.
read 5 of them. And the most surprising one is actually Kurt Vonnegut's collection that I mentioned earlier. It's called A Man Without a Country. So those are a collection of essays, a collection of speeches that he made around, I guess, American universities. And then in a few of them actually, he mentioned American socialists and the way they contributed to bettering the working class in America. That was super, super interesting. He basically wrote that after the Bush administration initiated the Iraq War, and he was not a fan of that at all. He's very much like an anti-war person. And then he says that, the title is called A Man Without a Country. He mentions like how he is disappointed with America and some of America's policies.
Yeah.
Oh. Let's move on to the juicy opinions section.
First question. What are your favorite books of the year?
So my favorite books. I also have 2 tiers within my favorite books.
Yeah, that's great. We love that. We like to see that.
So the life-changing tier was The Prophet and also 乡土中国, which is from the soils. The Prophet because it really helped me this year when I most needed it. And from the soils, I think as a Chinese Australian immigrant, I've made a lot of observations over the years in terms of Chinese Western cultural differences and societal differences. But there were some observations that I couldn't put into a pattern or pin down to an underlying reason. And this book really helped me do that. So I think it's been very important for me. And especially now that I'm planning to move back to China, it's very important for me to have
I'm
this
so
basic
glad you
understanding.
found it. Like I like what you called it, life-changing tier, because that really is what good books can do.
Yeah. And then there's the next tier, which is still like 5 out of 5 for me. These are books that really touched me in a certain way or are just like really excellent or marvelous in their own way. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I actually got 10 books in this category.
Amazing.
In terms of these books, I'll just do a list in no particular order. So the Yuhua book that I mentioned before, 在细雨中呼喊, it's like very classic Yuhua in terms of it being like really dark and absurd and depressing, but also
And violent? Was it violent?
somewhat not
okay.
too violent.
Okay.
But it was still humorous. Like there were
I need to read it. Oh my god.
there were sequences
humor?
where it was dark humor, but like it's still humor, and that would just make me chuckle. And also a little bit hopeful as well. I think that's the kind of Yuhua magic. Other books, sorry, it's taking me so long. The Order of Time. It's a physics book actually about time. And it's basically just messes up all your pre-existing notions of time by Carlo Rovelli.
It's on my reading list as well.
Yes, who is a very renowned physicist himself. But he's called the poet of physics.
Oh my god.
So yeah, one of the reviews is like, oh, physics has found its poet. And it is truly poetic. It goes into a little bit of technical detail, but towards the end, it actually helped me answer the question of, what am I? Which is very profound.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that book. Other books, I'll try to be quicker. Another one is The Ocean at the End of the Lane, which
Neil Gaiman.
Neil Gaiman.
For those of you who don't know, The Ocean at the End of the Lane is sometimes marketed as a fairy tale for adults. It's also a little bit related to physics as well, right? It's about wormholes. Except in the book, it's a literal hole on a boy's foot in which he pulls out a worm. Love it.
I listened to the audiobook version of this, narrated by Neil Gaiman himself.
Yeah. Absolute legend.
I highly recommend all of his books to be listened to one, just because his narration is so on point. He's a very talented voice actor. Similarly, another one that we love is Stephen King on writing. I've started this book like 8 years ago. I'm sorry, I just never got a chance to finish it, and now I finished it, and
Congrats.
It's good, right?
it's really good. Yeah, I think you guys would have.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah,
absolutely loved it.
It's gold for emerging writers. There's a lot of just stories about his life, but they are they can be translated into useful tips and guidances and wisdom. Okay, other top tier books. This one, it's interesting. It will be quite different from anything that you guys read. It's called The Course of Love by Alain de Botton, who like a lot of people regard him as like a self-help writer. Like he's like I think he's psychologist trained. And one of his earlier books was like Consolations of Philosophy, which is quite famous as well. Yeah, he's very popular on YouTube, along with like, your Esther Perels and whatnot.
I've literally never heard of this.
Oh my god, what is this group?
I've heard of Esther Perel.
Yeah, but like very helpful like life wisdom type of writer. But so The Course of Love is actually distilling a lot of his philosophies on love into an actual fiction. So
it's fiction.
It is fiction, but like basically the protagonists are like 工具人. They're like tools to illustrate what he's trying to say about love. So it goes from when they first meet, they meet cute, to like them getting married and like not divorced, but like them having affairs and like having to deal with children, like just like very mundane marriage things, and just sheds wisdom like along the way. And it is very bittersweet, but also quite profound in terms of his messages. And last one on the top list is Flatland. Do you guys know about it?
I've heard of it.
Yes, a romance in multiple dimensions. Is the subtitle by Edwin A. Abbott.
Flatland. I've heard of it. Yeah.
So it's actually a
romance
sci-fi.
Whoa.
But kind of, it's the most unusual book. It uses geometry to illustrate different. It is actually a social satire. That's
it's
most
so many. You've said it's a romance. You've said it's a sci-fi. Now it's a social satire. Love it.
I think that's
I did say many dimensions.
No, that's literally the subtitle of the book. Is a romance of many dimensions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so I don't know what else to say about it, except for like just go ahead and read it yourself, and you understand.
In terms of my favorite books, I'll be honest, it's a bit of a tough reading year, actually. I haven't discovered that many, like you said, life-changing books. I did discover a few, but not that many. But it's also like what Achim said, maybe my standards have shifted. Okay, well, honorable mentions by me. First one is We by Yevgeny Zamyatin. It is a monumental work of dystopian fiction, and George Orwell's 1984 is entirely based on We by Zamyatin. It's no secret, George Orwell has published his review of We. It's fantastic. I love 1984, and We is amazing because it's a piercing portrait of life in an authoritarian state. But the only limitation, I think, is the language, because it's originally in Russian, and I think Zamyatin came from an engineering background. But it could also be because of the translation, the way it's translated. So the sentences don't flow as well. So it's a little bit difficult to get into, but I think it's definitely worth it. Okay, another honorable mention is Simple Passion by Annie Ernaux. And the author talks about her experience of falling in love. She manages to talk about this very personal, very engrossing experience from a very objective and clinical angle. That's what really impressed me, because a lot of times when people write about love, especially their own love, like it's hard to see things clearly, right? When you're in it, when you're
That
engrossed
is
in
very
passion.
intriguing because, yeah, how do you even
exactly.
be objective in this
Exactly.
situation?
I don't know how she did it, but she managed to do it.
Was it
Wow.
third person or in first person?
First person.
Oh,
First person. Yeah.
That's even more fascinating.
Yeah, she had an affair with a Russian diplomat stationed in Paris. So she's an author writing in French. She's a French author. She would recount that during this affair, like, you know how passion sometimes blinds you and makes you do silly things? Because it's an illicit affair, she isn't always sure when she's going to meet her lover next. She would be like, okay, on this day, I went to this cafe, I read this book, and I drank this coffee. And then we met. So maybe if I repeat the same little things today, that'll bring him to me. Things like that. Yeah.
It sounds like Delulu.
Yeah. It is. But then the way she writes it is like so clinical, almost a little bit ruthless. She doesn't try to hide anything. And it's not a book about the morality of the affair. She's not interested in that. She's just interested in the experience of having your heart engrossed and lost in passion. I'm just so impressed that she can write about such a personal topic without being self-absorbed at all. And another honorable mention is A Man Without a Country by Kurt Vonnegut. I've already mentioned it before. It's great. And also White Nights by Dostoevsky also makes my honorable mentions. Oh, I'm very excited to talk about my top two. The first is China in 10 Words by Yu Hua. Yeah, he talks about modern China with such honesty and clarity and humor as well.
Right.
I'm really excited to talk about my favorite book of the year. Drum roll, please. I think you can guess. My favorite book of the year is undoubtedly The Color Purple by Alice Walker.
Yeah.
Oh, honestly, it's the best fiction, just period. Like, if you want to write fiction, if you want to read fiction, you want the best representative of the fiction genre, read The Color Purple. So it's about Black women living in the US and in Africa, living under extreme, horrific patriarchy. So we follow two sisters who live in the American South in the early 20th century, and they live in poverty and just horrific domestic violence. But they find hope and resilience in womanly love. So the author asks a question like what to do in the face of horrendous patriarchy. And she gives a powerful answer, which is to find love between women. And this is sisterly love, friendship, and also romantic love between women. The novel is presented as a series of letters. The first half is one of the sisters, Celie, her letters to God. And the second half of it is the other sister, Nettie's letters to Celie. It's obviously very compelling and deep, but it somehow also has a great plot because Alice Walker just knows when to insert new information to move the story at exactly the right moments. And then in the first half of the book, Celie is not a very educated woman, so her letters are limited in terms of grammar and vocabulary, obviously, but it still, like, of course, this is Alice Walker's skill. She still manages to present a lot of depth in even Celie's writing. I remember there's this one scene where Celie is bathing her friend and Celie is in love with her friend. She doesn't know it yet at the time, but her friend was hurt and so she was bathing her. And then she says, when I washed her body, it felt like I'm praying.
Oh, that is beautiful.
That's so beautiful.
So beautiful. This book gave me nightmares because of how horrendous the patriarchy was. And it really helped me imagine what it's like to be a woman and be completely and utterly trapped in that situation, in an abusive home, abusive father or abusive husband. And then your literal only escape is death. When you're alive, you're overworked and you are beaten and you're just dehumanized. That terrified me. I actually had nightmares.
Oh, wow.
I'm a very cynical person. But like this book managed to convince me to like have faith in love and hope.
That is a
huge thing to say. Yeah, I know. And then I need to read it again desperately because the first time I actually forgot to analyze the literary techniques and everything because I was just so immersed. So I need to read it again to get all of it. Yeah, such a good sign.
Yeah,
and to read it again to get
detached.
everything out of it. Exactly.
I've had my audible mentions probably in the sections above. And, let's see what I've missed. So,
any life-changing books?
yeah, in terms of life changing, I guess The Prophet. So, as we've mentioned,
it's
yeah,
a common
definitely.
one.
it's definitely on top of my list. I think it just fundamentally changed my views, my perceptions on things like in my personal life. I need that capacity. I need the time to process. It's almost like a higher frequency. It's like something that's a higher existence that I'm trying to channel through me.
I understand it.
Yeah. I guess this is the approach where he described as the human behavior is observed by this prophet himself. So it's devoided from you. It's like looking away from you. So that's definitely my top pick of the book that I've read this year. And another one, really good one, I guess honorable mentions is the Japanese murder mystery read by Seiichiro Oyama. And he is also like a hidden gem of murder mystery writer. I mean, he's less popular in the Western world, especially. But I guess his style is the most like authentic classic, the Honkaku style, which is like the
本格
yeah,
Yeah.
which is the most like classical way to. It has like a.
What does that mean? What does that mean? I don't even know what that means.
Okay, so it has the emphasis on the mystery itself, rather than
Okay.
yeah, like
So it's more logic, more.
yeah, exactly,
Logic,
like
okay.
more detection, more logic.
Deduction.
Deduction and emphasizes on like the construction of the mystery itself rather than the social
The characters.
background.
Yeah.
the background.
Okay.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think in terms of Western writers, one that I've read that fits into that description is Ellery Queen. Yeah.
Yeah, Ellery Queen, one of my favorites, if not the favorite, detection novel writers. Oh, actually, I had a really interesting reread. So it's the crime fiction or historical fiction "Live by Night" by Dennis Lehane.
That was your
Yeah.
whole teenage identity.
Exactly. And I just thought it would be really, really fun to.
How did you
reread it.
find it on reread? Be honest.
So I did some work. I put in the efforts for the sake of my reread. I rewatched the movie.
Oh, by the way, I think Dennis Lehane is also known for his book Shutter Island.
Yeah, Shutter Island.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
right. So
Yeah, same author. Yeah.
The franchise. Yeah.
Yeah, the book that Achim is talking about is Live by Night.
Live by Night. Yeah. So I read. I saw the movie again, portrayed by Ben Affleck.
Okay.
Yeah, it was quite a beautiful movie, to be honest. But the book is just so much better.
It's a mafia book, right?
Yeah. It also sets in the 1920s, 30s of the American Boston region where they had this ban on alcohol.
Oh, Prohibition.
Prohibition, yeah, exactly. And yeah, this just I don't know. I think in terms of reread, yeah, I was shocked again by how relevant this is.
It holds up after all these years.
So I think another top pick of my read, in parallel to The Prophet, is The Labyrinth by Borges.
The what?
Labyrinth.
The Labyrinth.
Labyrinth. It's a short story anthology.
Yeah.
For his short stories and his essays. Because Borges, he has never written a novel, actually. Always written poetries, short stories, and essays. It changes my view on language itself. I think we talk about poetry, how we push the boundaries for languages. I think that's what he did in those short stories.
Yeah.
It changes, like, it really blurs the line between fiction and reality. I think it's also, I think it can be categorized as like magic realism. Yeah, just
Borges is known for that, right?
Yeah. And then I think it's just a really like a ideal way to start my day. It's to go through the Borges quote.
I love going through quotes. I go through my favorite authors' quotes on Goodreads all the time. I love it. Okay, cool. Now, should we jump into the spicy question? What are your least favorite books of the year?
Shall I go first?
Yes.
Yeah, I have this really burning urge of this insurgence.
I can't wait.
Oh.
I cannot wait.
Yeah, let's get spicy.
It's indignation.
You're
Why
offended.
why would you do this to me?
You're offended.
Yeah, I'm so offended. It's it's actually the recurring book of Tender is the Flash.
Oh, I can't believe it made it to the least favorites list. That's shocking.
Wait, this is the book that you just lent me this morning.
Yeah. I've tried. Like I can't suffer alone. You have to suffer with me. I think I would give a really generous rating of like 4 out of 5 for everything that's before the very last page.
Okay.
I guess
That's a very interesting rating.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess
What can possibly go down on that last page?
Yeah, exactly.
That ruins the entire book.
exactly. And then I just really love like the world building is quite credible, and like the character development are there. And then for like the very last minute, the like the last page plot twist.
Okay.
I don't know how I feel about it. Like it might be because of like she was under pressure and she's tried to rush to hurry to finish the book.
Okay. Yeah.
Like that's my initial take.
Okay.
But on a second thought, I think there might be implications on why the character would do that. I don't know. It's really up to anyone's guesses, and then keen to see how would you react to that.
Well, we know that
It's almost like a jump scare in terms of like a movie portrayal. Yeah, it's like
we know how you feel about it.
it's like James when he pulls these like jump scares out of nowhere in the movie.
Okay.
Yeah,
You've made me pretty keen to read this.
yeah.
You know what I would do right now?
Mm?
If you lent it to me instead of Cady, I would just read the last page first.
No, you were spoiled.
I don't give a fuck. My least favorite books of the year. The first one is incredibly scandalous, and it is The Book Thief by Marcus Zuzak. I'm gonna get into so much trouble because this is like kind of like an Australian classic at this point. Like,
yeah, you're losing
Yeah.
2/3 of your.
I know,
listeners
10
already.
10 million copies sold, everything. Oh my god! And I stand by it. I stand by it. It's one of my least favorite books of the year. It's especially heartbreaking because I had such high expectations.
Uh-huh.
I thought I was gonna love it because there's a story of a teenage girl. There's friendship, empathy, everything I love to read about. And I did enjoy all of those things while reading, but I just can't get into his writing style. I quit this book at like 70% because I was just like, it's bothering me so much. It's not worth putting myself through this anymore. His writing style, if you've read it, you'll know what I mean. It's unconventional, and there's a lot of like really short paragraphs. Like, it just like it completely destroyed my ability to connect with the story in any way. I was unable to connect with the voice. I cared about Liesel, and I cared about all of her childhood adventures, stealing books. All of that was great. It's just the writing style.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not for me. And I acknowledge that it is personal preference. And I do think if you like that style, you'll like the book.
Nice. Okay, I guess it's my
Cady?
turn.
Yes.
Well, you guys all know what my least favorite book is. The only
The
book
Fourth
I
Wing.
DNF.
But
I'm sorry to everyone who has bought this book.
like, you know how you mentioned it's the amalgamation of every trope imaginable?
Yeah.
Maybe that's what makes it so widely appealing.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And like I just can't get over the fact that like the protagonist is just a
So
special
perfect.
snowflake
Yeah.
in every single way. Like her hair is like she has like silver ends to her hair, but like it's natural.
Oh,
Like,
fuck.
I found it somewhat enjoyable. It's designed to be like very gripping, and like you want to keep reading it. Like it's
Okay.
like it has like
Formulaic
cliffhanger-
that way?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I think from an artistic perspective,
There's no artistic perspective.
There's no artistic value of
Exactly.
it. Yeah.
exactly.
Okay, the next question is, what are your biggest disappointments and biggest surprises? My biggest disappointment is a book that I haven't mentioned yet, actually, and is Catch-22 by Joseph Heller.
Really?
Yeah, I DNF'd it really early on.
Whoa.
And it's the biggest disappointment because I thought I was gonna love it because it ticked all the right things that I'm interested in. You know, it's absurdist satire, it's anti-war, and then people recommend it alongside books like American Psycho and Slaughterhouse-Five, both of which I love. But I think Catch-22 is just, it's known for its disjointed, nonsensical style, but it's just a little bit too disjointed for me. I DNF'd it at like page 10 because I didn't know what he was talking about. But I do...
That's very, very early.
Yeah. I'll try it again in the far future. But now it's my biggest disappointment of the year. Yeah.
I've actually read about 2 chapters into the book.
Yeah?
I didn't decide actively to not finish it. It's just like I had other books going on and I didn't. But I think I will try that another time.
And then my biggest surprise is actually Simple Passion.
Like as in pleasant surprise.
It's pleasant surprise, yeah. It's not my typical genre because it's kind of like personal memoir. But I was really pleasantly surprised by how not self-absorbed it was. Yeah, it was great. The next question is, what book did you read the most quickly and what book took you the longest time to read?
The book that I absolutely read the most quickly, I just devoured in like 2 days, was Yellowface.
Nice.
Because it is written to be like very like
fast-paced.
Fast-paced, yeah.
The book that I read the most quickly is My Dark Vanessa by K. Elizabeth Russell. It's a very talked about book, very popular on TikTok. It's about a 16-year-old girl having a relationship with her adult English teacher. It's very messed up. And that book is kind of similar to Yellowface for me in that like slightly unremarkable area. Unfortunately, that's partly why I was able to read it so quickly as well. It touched me and it was a good book, but it wasn't like life-changing. My friend lent it to me and he was shocked by how quickly I read it. And it's because around that time I was reading so much like classic stuff and I was like, oh, I forgot how easy it is to read contemporary literature. And the book that took me the longest time, this is worth mentioning as well, because I still haven't finished it technically, but like it's been like fucking 8 months. It is On the Road by Jack Kerouac.
Wait, I still haven't finished.
I still haven't finished
it. What is this book?
Go,
let me tell you. On the Road, it's about 1950s underground America. So we follow 2 young people, one Sal, he's a writer, and his friend Dean Moriarty. They are like, I guess, underground intellectuals, and they just get into a car and drive all around America. And then they look for new experiences, look for things they haven't seen, landscapes, people. But it's like a very hedonistic and self-indulgent kind of vibe. And it's also written in a famous stream of consciousness style. Stream of consciousness means like there's some like really rambly bits, but I have to wade through those to find like the good bits. And there are many, many good bits. Like this,
that's frustrating.
This book is so good. It has like such beautiful lines. Like, for example, he was talking about driving through, I think, the Midwest. And he says like I was sitting in the passenger seat. I didn't have any food on me. I ate and drank the American landscape outside the window. Yeah, and then there's a lot of, sex, drugs, and jazz. So the good bits are so fucking good. And the bad bits are so difficult to wade through. So it's a very tiring experience. But I definitely have to finish this book this year because,
I think it's a good road trip book.
It is.
You would bring it to like a road trip.
It is a road trip book. Like, it's about road trips, but I don't know if it's good to read.
No, if you think about it, it's basically the embodiment of the Americans' obsession with driving. It's like you get this from American Gods as well.
Oh, okay,
You play on those like country music.
Okay, now let's look towards the future. What are our reading goals for 2024?
It's a little bit embarrassing to admit that I bought a lot of books from my friends and you guys. I haven't finished them. So my goal is for 2024 is just to go through these books, as many as I can.
That's a good goal. That's a very solid goal.
Yeah. So I have A Swim in a Pond in the Rain by George Sanders from Fanling. The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde from.
That is a short book.
Yeah.
That's also from me. That's not a
also from
borrowing.
you.
That's a gift.
Oh yes, thank you so much. Wait, you shouldn't have told me. Otherwise, I would never get to it.
You can't it's in the podcast now. You can't go back.
Okay.
We're holding you accountable, listeners.
In terms of genre, I try to read a little bit more poetry. Although I think 2023 is a good year for me in terms of poetry. Just like to gain more exposure, maybe on. I'm now currently reading Ocean Vuong. I'm almost done with the copy for Time is a Mother. I also had a copy from Chen Chen. One of his latest book called My Emergency Contact Just Got in an Emergency. That's so it's supposed to be a funny book.
Okay.
In contrast to Ocean Vuong's really disheartening, tender piece. Yeah. And in terms of numbers, I guess 24, 25 should be a realistic goal.
Fanling?
Yes. My goal, also read more poetry. I really haven't read enough poetry this year. And another major goal is to find more immersive books. And I think the area to look for is fiction. I want to be completely immersed again. The past year, I've read too much from like an analytical angle. I just want to let go of that sometimes and just be immersed. I'm going to be on the lookout for books that can potentially bring me that. Yeah, and also listen to more audiobooks, I think. I think I'm going to listen to Great Expectations audiobook now that Cady has convinced me. And also, in terms of like the physical books that I have, I need to get through more of them before I buy new things. Yes.
I think that's a shared goal.
Yeah,
all
yeah.
book lovers. I actually smashed my reading goals for 2023. Very happy for myself. I had a goal of 25 books and I finished 26.
Yeah.
Yay! I'm actually downscaling my book goals for next year, considering that I'm going to China and starting my own business. Ooh. So I will have less time to read. So slightly downscaled to 22 books, which I still think is doable. In terms of the kinds of books I want to read, I'm still just gonna be like going with the flow and like responding to what I need at that time. But there are a few big books that have taken me just way too many years.
Which ones?
That I just really want to
Let me guess,
finish.
Crime and Punishment.
No, I haven't started that one. Why would I start on that one? But 红楼梦, Dream of the Red Chamber.
Okay.
I'm actually 2/3 of the way through, so I just gotta find a time to get through it. If for listeners, this is
a
like
Chinese
one of the four Chinese classical literature
Novels.
The pillars of Chinese classical literature. Nice.
I'm gonna carry at least 50 books to China, like
Nice.
books that I need to read for this year, and
Wow.
also books that like I want to just keep with me always.
Is The Prophet
Nice.
one of them?
Yeah, that's in my bag.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. I guess that's a wrap up on the wrap up episode. Okay, thank you so much to Cady for being on this very special episode.
Thank you so much for inviting me. This has been a really, really fun conversation.
Yeah, you're like one of our special friends as well.
Yeah.
I think for both
Vice
Achim and
versa.
I.
Yeah.
Oh, we're really gonna miss you when you move to China.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you'll continue to listen to our podcast. So
I
that'll be a way
I
to
will
stay
break
connected.
the wall
Yeah,
for you guys.
Oh.
Spotify is bad.
Actually,
Wait.
oh no, yeah, it is.
Okay, well, thank you for listening to this episode of Licensed Poetics. I'm your host, Fanling.
And I'm your host, Achim.
Thank you. We'll see you in our next episode. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.